It started sputtering hard, but
made it look easy.
But yeah, yeah, it wasn't bad. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I was pretty anxious about being able to make it through that mud puddle. It was deep and long, and a lot of times you get some really deep ruts in that mud on the bottom. No traction. I could have gotten hung up pretty easily in that. But that's the beauty of having a travel buddy like Nate with you. We both had winches, and basically just the peace of mind of knowing that someone is with you, that you can make a recovery if you need to in those types of situations. And that's kind of foreshadowing to a future trip you'll have to check out. Physics, that's amazing. Okay, time to see if we can get Nate winched up and
You got it.
guess that means it's my turn. This is steep, but I'm gonna put my trust in Nate's winch and sit back and enjoy the ride, I guess. I needed a break from the office this afternoon, and so I figured I'd come out and have lunch in a pretty nice restaurant. I also thought it'd be a good chance to share with you a little bit more about this Land Cruiser I've been driving. And kind of explain why it means so much to me. Table block. So what you're looking at right here is a 1974 FJ55 Land Cruiser, also fondly known as the Iron Pig to the Land Cruiser community. This Land Cruiser was purchased new in 1974, but I'll get back to that in just a minute. As you can see, it's in pretty good condition. There's not a lot of rust. As far as dents and dings, those are all pretty clean. It's been well used inside and out, but really, for what it is immaculate. You'll also note that it's pretty much in stock condition. Stock transmission, stock transfer case, stock engine, stock suspension. I believe that there was an add-a-leaf put in at one point to just give the suspension a little bit of a lift. But other than that, it's pretty well stock. As of right now, everything pretty much works on it. I feel pretty confident running, driving it, and using it as kind of a daily commuter. But believe me when I say, it hasn't always been that way. This vehicle has been well used and I can honestly attest, abused during its lifetime. So as I mentioned before, this vehicle was purchased brand new in 1974. And I've got the proof right here. We've got the original owner's manual and the dealer identification card. T. Alderman 9/6/1974 for an FJ55. That's right. This truly is a clean one owner. My dad purchased it. It's been titled in his name ever since until he passed away about 7 years ago. We moved his name off the title and my name on the title so that I could continue to run, register, drive it, and use it. As the story goes, my parents met in Los Angeles, California, and got married. Soon after they got married, they moved out to northern Arizona because my dad was a photographer. And, well, he wanted country like this to photograph and to enjoy. They soon purchased a Land Cruiser FJ40 that they spent a lot of time out in the backcountry exploring, enjoying, camping, hiking, photographing, anything you could think of in the outdoors. But they soon realized that that was just a little bit too small, and maybe with the anticipation of starting a family, it was time to get something a little bit bigger. And the deal was struck to where if my dad could figure out how to not have a payment, then he could buy a new Land Cruiser. So according to my mom, he sold a rifle to make up the difference, traded in the FJ40, and ended up with the FJ55. And since then, this Land Cruiser has been all over the United States. In fact, it's been outside of the United States. One of the first big trips they took was from Kayenta, Arizona, up into Banff, Canada, across British Columbia, down through Washington and Oregon, and down into Los Angeles, where they were from. But even more important than the on-road trips were the off-road trips. I can truly attest that this has got dust and dirt from miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles of dirt roads leading to spectacular destinations, spectacular scenery, unique petroglyphs, and cozy campsites all over Arizona, Utah, Colorado, California, Nevada, I mean all over the place. In fact, so many miles that it's on its second engine. We can't remember if this one was rebuilt or if a rebuilt one was put in. But yeah, that's how many miles it's got on it. It's on its second motor and still going strong. And like I said, not only was it used well, but it was also abused. This Land Cruiser was my first vehicle when I turned 16 to drive. It's what I drove to school and commuted in and to work, all those different things I did in this Land Cruiser. And I'm not the only one. My oldest sister drove it when she turned 16 through high school and even off to college about 90 miles away. My brother drove it as a 16-year-old driver. We all had it, we all used it, we all abused it. But that was only after we had experienced many, many, many off-road and camping trips in this vehicle. Some of my fondest memories are flat towing a 1960 Willys Jeep behind this Land Cruiser until we hit dirt road, unhooking and caravanning together to some absolutely amazing destinations. And that's right, you guessed it, Some of those destinations was the Grand Canyon North Rim. One of those Grand Canyon trips I'm going to throw a picture of right here. We did the same thing. We caravanned, flat towed the Jeep behind the Land Cruiser, went up and set up a base camp with the Land Cruiser, and then used the Jeep. We called it Little Red. We used the Jeep to go out to the point, which I think could have been Crazy Jug. I don't remember that closely though. But we ran out to the point for our usual sunset photography, just enjoying the view, and came back. And on the way back, the headlights in the Jeep started shorting out. What we discovered was that there was like a thermal fuse in there that would get too hot and kick them off. And so if you shut them off and waited for a little bit, then you could pull it back out, pull out the switch and turn them back on. So I was driving, and my dad said that he knew that I was having a hard time seeing when I'd lean into the windshield. So we drive a little bit with the headlights so I could see what the road looked like. He'd reach over, turn off the headlight switch, and I'd drive from memory as long as I could. And when I'd start leaning forward to see what was next, he'd kick them back on. We'd drive a little bit more with the headlights off, kick them back off, and that's how we made it back to camp. I also remember at that same camp spot, we were sleeping out. I think we had just stretched a tent and we're sleeping out underneath that. And we had a Siberian Husky with us. And during the middle of the night, the coyotes started yipping and howling. And that Husky just joined right in, yipping and howling with them. It was pretty cool. One of the things that I love about this current setup that I have is this stove right here traveled with the Land Cruiser on a lot of those trips. My brother can attest that a lot of the meals that we ate on those camp trips were cooked on this stove, and a lot of times it was just like this. Steak and steak fries cooked together in the same pot. I used 2 pots and I threw in a little onion just because I had the room. Quite a few years before my dad's passing, the Land Cruiser kind of became a second vehicle. He ran tours and picked up a Jeep Cherokee and a few other rigs that he used more often than the Land Cruiser, and they needed more attention. They needed to have the insurance and the repairs and all those things done more than this because they were part of his business. I also think personally, after getting this back, that part of it was this is a very physical vehicle to drive. You've got no power steering, the brakes are not great, and I think it was just to the point where it was just kind of hard to drive. It doesn't like to run in the cold, and so I think a lot of those other vehicles were just more convenient and a little bit more comfortable and easier for him to drive as he got a little bit older. You're gonna have to excuse me while I sit and enjoy this for a minute. Looks like we're just about to lose that sun there. Man, that food was good. It was just a cube steak, but I tell you, definitely a good steak and such a good meal. Now I know why that was a staple on a lot of those camp trips that we went on. I know as soon as that sun disappears, I'm gonna need this. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick it on right now. It's pretty warm when the sun's out, but as soon as it goes down this time of year, whew, it cools off quick. As I mentioned before, I believe it was back in 2015, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. I believe then it was stage 3 when he initially was diagnosed. They knew that it had gotten into his lymph nodes and needed to be acted on pretty quick. He went through a procedure to have his lymph nodes removed and a few other things, and after that they did a scan and everything looked clear. But as it often does, on a future scan, my dad said it lit up like a Christmas tree. It had come back and come back with a vengeance. And somewhat unexpectedly, but I also think we were somewhat prepared for it. He fell ill and passed away in March of 2016. I think at the time I felt prepared for it. I had been through a few close losses in my life that I felt like I was prepared for losing my dad, but it wasn't until after he was gone, after the funeral services, were over and most everybody in our community had been able to give us our condolences, did it really sink in how much I missed him and how much I would miss him in the future. And one of the one of those hard moments was when my son was born, just shortly thereafter. Recognizing that this man that I loved and admired and respected, my son's grandpa wouldn't be there to take him on these adventures, to take him camping, to show him all the amazing experiences that I enjoyed as a kid. But just as the example of a man, a good man, I really wanted my son to be able to have that. So that was pretty devastating to lose my dad literally in the same month that my son was born. But we had the great honor of using my dad's first name as my son's middle name so that that memory could be kept alive in his name, and so that he could reflect on that example as he grew and matured. That's also what made me being the recipient of this Land Cruiser so special to me, because this Land Cruiser really was the epitome of my dad. You ask anybody in Kanab about Terry Alderman, and they're gonna say, "Oh yeah, that blue and white Land Cruiser. That's just this was my dad, and this is what my dad loved to do." This is what took my dad to all those places that he loved, the places that he found solace, the places that he recharged his batteries, the places that we were able to make memories as a family. I still, we've got a trailer. I'll throw a picture of that up here too. I believe it was like a 26-foot travel trailer, camp trailer, that they painted blue and white to match this, and they would pull this. I've just got to laugh when I think about it, because this thing is so gutless. So I just can't believe and picture this pulling a 26-foot travel trailer, but it did, all over the place. In fact, there is a peak, I think it was in Colorado, there was a peak that they pulled that travel trailer over in the snow, got down on the other side where law enforcement was stopping vehicles, requiring them to chain up or turn around, and stood there in disbelief as this Land Cruiser came pulling through after having gone over the mountain, pulling a 26-foot travel trailer in the snow. And that's why it's so important to me and so precious to me, that I get to have this and drive it, and the opportunity that I had to bring it back to life and get it back on the road again. Okay, I think I got through the hard part. I'm sorry if that was uncomfortable for you. You know what? I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry if that was uncomfortable for you. It was uncomfortable for me, but it's important to me for you to understand how much that means to me, and why this trip that I went on was so important and so special to me. I figured when I went and picked this up from my parents' house, I had to trailer it because it had been sitting for a while and brakes, and it wasn't running right, a few things. If I had to guess, I was going to guess close to 15 to 20 years that this had been pretty well sitting. I think it had moved a couple of times during that period, but just kind of short moves around the yard, never really on the road or anything like that. Been sitting for quite a while, so it needed some love to kind of get it back to where it is. So I'm going to go through and kind of tell you a little bit about what I did. Mostly I'm going to focus on the things that I changed, not necessarily the maintenance or repairs or anything like that, but a lot of the things that I changed and some of the things that I hope to change in the future to make it even better. So I'm guessing one of the biggest things that you'll note as being different. Thanks, Toner, you interrupted me. Is the roof rack. Obviously this has a different roof rack. The old roof rack, I'm going to go ahead and say it was famous. In fact, it was featured in a Manafree catalog, and I'm wondering if the bumper might have been too. I honestly don't know for sure on that, but it sounds like my dad had worked a deal with Manafree, the catalog, and like Land Cruiser Parts, aftermarket parts company, to have that roof rack and to do a photo shoot so that they could use it in their catalog when they sold it. So I thought that was pretty cool, and I wish I would have known that before I replaced it. I actually found that out afterwards, that was the case. But yeah, that's one of the biggest changes, is that roof rack up there. Now I'll tell you a little bit more about that as I get further on. Another thing that has probably changed is front bumper. This jack used to be back here, and there used to be some big tow hooks or recovery points on the horns there, but all that got switched around when I threw a winch on there. This vehicle never had a winch. My dad used to use like a hand line or come along hand winch, whatever you want to call it. He used to use that for his recoveries, or he just wouldn't get stuck. I'm gonna try and think here. But I do not recall any single time my dad getting stuck. He was a master behind the wheel for sure. But I'm not as good of a driver as he is, and I knew that I needed a way to self-recover, and that winch has just been super handy. In fact, that saved a Land Cruiser FJ80. That's my claim to fame on that. So dual locked Land Cruiser FJ80. That winch saved one time. So anyways, so that's something that's changed too. When I picked this up, it had 33 950 tires on it that were pretty rotten. They had really good tread on it, but they were really rotted out, and I needed to just get this on the road, and so I just picked up these 31 1050s, basically just to make it to where it would run and drive, and had tires to get around on. I think at some point that's probably going to change, but for now it's doing just fine. Another big change that I made was this drawer system back here. When I picked this up, this tailgate did not work. These FJ55s, they're just known for that rear window having issues going up and down, and my dad fought that a lot, that window issue. In fact, as a kid, I never remember being able to have access to the tailgate like this. We always had to go through the back seat because this was broken and he couldn't find the parts that he needed to fix it. So that was kind of one of the first major things that I did, was tore into that, found the broken gear, found a replacement, and a used replacement, which I'm still amazed is holding together, and got this tailgate working. And next I built this drawer system. That was before I started doing my YouTube channel. I built this drawer system to go back here because I really liked the idea of the storage and the setup, and I wanted to be able to camp out of this rig. So I do have a new gear to go in here that I need to do at some point, and I need to do it soon because, like I said, I'm worried this is going to quit on me at some point. In fact, this drawer system, you'll notice, is wide enough to where it fits. It's not like a, what's the word? It's not a permanently installed fixture. And I did that on purpose, planning for this to break on me at some point. This lid also, if you peel up the carpet, has a hinged lid back there because I was worried that I would at some point go get to camp, need to get to my stuff, and that window would break. And when that's broken, you can't get in the tailgate. There's like no manual wind or anything like that. It's a huge process to get into it. So I made that drawer system to where A, I could access the stuff from the top if I had to, and B, to where it could be slid forward and out of the way so that I could get to this tailgate if I had to. So, but this was actually made out of some, so these are shelves that were kind of junk shelves left over in my business. This is all pallet wood. The drawers are pallet wood. This is OSB on the bottom here. So this OSB and then this cheap plywood is both scrap that was left over from the building renovation that we did. Same thing with this piece here. So this whole drawer system I basically made in an afternoon just out of scrap wood. Oh, this is cool too. I don't know how easy you'll be able to see it, but this is plexiglass right here. I've got a plexiglass there, and then back there is a slide. And there was a sheet of plexiglass that was left in the old building that we renovated. It was an old Ace Hardware, and I cut that into strips, and that's what these drawers slide on. And as you can see, works pretty good. So I'm honestly pretty proud of this. I figured it was going to be my first prototype, and then I would get actual good wood and like bearing slides and stuff like that to redo it. But it's just worked so well. You know, it's just worked so good that I haven't had a reason to change it. And I found that I really made the height just right for this reason. I could fit Toner's kennel in there just right, and it just kind of wedges in there, holds it good. I've got storage space down the sides. Usually I've got my 7-gallon water jug there that has the pump system in it. So yeah, and then I've got a 12 volt, I don't know if you can see it back there, that 12 volt outlet is to plug in that pump and run. So yeah, this drawer system was kind of one of the big features that I added and changed with the FJ55. So after having it for several months, getting it to where it would start and run, I kind of got serious about really making it something that I could run and drive. That's when the tires went on. I had to do, let that airplane get past. I had to put a fuel pump in it. I put in a gas tank out of that parts 55 that I have. What else? The brakes. The brakes was a big one. I put a lot of money into the brakes. In fact, I took it to a shop and had them go through it, and they really struggled with it. The brakes still are really bad. I don't know how else to put it, but they're just really bad. Even for drum brakes, they're just really bad. That's one of my big goals coming up, is to really go through the brakes and see if I can't figure them out, because they're really bad. Just really bad. So, but I did a lot of those things to get it to where I felt comfortable driving it, and got to the point where I started driving it, taking it on day outings and taking my family on trips and stuff. And it made me realize and remember, I guess, it helped me remember how capable this is off-road. I know it doesn't look like much, doesn't have lockers or anything like that, but it is surprising how well this does off-road, how well that straight six moves it off-road. And it started getting me excited about, well, maybe this is an overland rig. Maybe I can really make this happen and take it to the next level. I had wanted a rooftop tent for quite a while. I watched like 4-wheel drive 24/7. They're the ones that gave me the idea for the drawers in the back too. And I just saw this would be so cool to be able to get out more remote than I normally do and be able to camp really comfortable out there. You know, I can roll out a tent and sleep on the ground and stuff like that, but I really love the idea of being able to get really remote away from all the people and be able to set up a rooftop tent and have a really nice, comfortable, luxury camp setup out there. And so I ended up purchasing this Rome rooftop tent, and with it I got the roof rack, that flat roof rack from that was from Ironman 4x4, and then also the awning on the back is from Ironman 4x4, and got that whole setup. So initially I just bought that system to go on this Land Cruiser. I tried to modify the roof rack that it was on here to make it work, but because I had the tall sides, it wouldn't allow the tent to fold off the way that it needed to. I ended up cutting it and having it fold off the back. I was going to try and do a hinge away thing. It just didn't work out that way, and so I landed with this roof rack that had the flat sides, so that it could sit on there and go. As I built like my off-road little camp trailer, my Boss Dad bungalow I call it, as I built that, and then as I recognized how cool that was and how comfortable it was to sleep in, I had a rack that I modified to go on my truck. I got to the point where I thought, well, let's just let the tent and the awning stay on this rack and move the rack from rig to rig and set it up that way, and that's worked really good too. So what I'm left with when I don't have this roof rack on here is just these crossbars that kind of stay on the Land Cruiser that act like a roof rack. I can just take this, set it on. There's holes right here for 6 bolts. Bolt it on, boom, off and ready to go. So really cool system, I think, and has worked really well for camping in the Land Cruiser. Now I remember my dad talking about camping in here, and he used to take and fold this back seat down. He said that he fit laying down in this back and he could sleep and camp back here. I am a few inches taller than my dad, and I know that I just wouldn't fit. It just wasn't going to work. And so that's why I went with the rooftop tent. Something a little bit bigger that I could stretch out on and really feel comfortable out camping. I think I could probably make this work if I had to, but I mean, when you've got that, why? So there you have it. There's the history of this FJ55, where it came from, how it landed in my hands, some of the changes that it's gone through since I've had it, and well, let's talk about what the future holds for this. I don't know. I don't know, other than I'm going to keep using it. When I changed the roof rack and had done other work on this rig, I was worried about making changes to the original Land Cruiser setup. I know a lot of people get hung up on that, especially with as clean of a specimen as this Land Cruiser is. Yeah, there's that side of me that's just like, nope, keep it original, restore it, leave it in its glory the way that it is. But I can't get past the idea that that's not what my dad wanted. He bought this to use it, and he did. He used the heck out of it. And he bought this for the purpose of getting out on the hills, off-roading, camping, and enjoying the great outdoors. That's where my mind is at with it too. I'm not as interested in keeping this original as I am in accommodating using this as much as possible. And so I'm really of the mind to make it more roadworthy, make it more comfortable, give it more power, make it more capable off-road, so that I can just use it for every adventure that I might want to go on. I don't know what that's going to be for sure, and I think my budget is probably going to limit a lot of what my dreams would be. Honestly, if I went straight to the top of my dreams, 4-cylinder Cummins, Dana 60s, I mean, you know what I mean? Full linked suspension, 37-inch tires, the works. That's where the tops of my dreams would be, but my budget just isn't there. So it's probably going to be just a little bit at a time, making improvements here and there, hopefully getting maybe close to that goal, but we'll see what happens for sure. I've also got a FJ60 drivetrain and chassis, and so there's that part of me that might drop the 2F in here, FJ60 axles, 5-speed transmission, that kind of deal, and just kind of step it up one notch, not all the way to the top, but one notch there. I don't know. But in the meantime, I just want to run it. I just want to run it. I want to drive it and use it to the best of my ability and the best of its ability right now. But you tell me. Tell me what you think ought to be the future of this Land Cruiser 55. You know, drop that stuff in the comments below. Tell me what you think. If you know of some good drivetrain upgrades that can go into this, if you're familiar with the 55s, if you have a 55, any of that stuff, drop it in the comments below. We'd love to hear about it. And since I'm standing back here, I ought to share with you one of the most important parts, the license plate. That's where the Lock-'em-In came from, was that license plate. My dad ran tours out of Monument Valley for several years, and they would convoy out to different locations, and the communications back then were done by CB radios. And so they'd be on their convoys headed out to wherever, or he'd be out with his friends on the weekends, that kind of a deal. But the first rig that would get to a point where it was sandy, muddy, rocky, whatever it is, and they decided that it was time to put them in four-wheel drive, they'd get on the radio and say, "Lock them in." And they'd all come to a stop, get out, turn in their hubs, get back in, and carry on to their destination. And so that custom plate is what that means. Lock them in, lock in those hubs. And that's what gave me the idea for the YouTube channel too, was that lock them in. So that's where I came up with the lock them in, grab a gear, and I'll see you in the hills, is from that license plate right there. So that being said, it's time for me to go grab my daughter from school. And so I'm going to let you get back to the Grand Canyon trip and enjoying that scenery out there. This spot that we stayed tonight, this Fire Point, man, it was beautiful. And I think I got some good shots of it too, of the evening, the sunset, the night sky, the sunrise. So you're really going to enjoy it. So I'm going to leave you with that. I'm going to hop in and roll out of here and say, until next time, lock them in, grab a gear. I'll see you in the hills.